Hello, my name is Tim Webb, founder of Texas Leadership Summit, and I want to welcome you to our Texas Leadership Summit podcast today, where we are joining in the conversation again, coming back to Megan Butler and our conversation about burnout. And so our desire is to give Christian leaders encourage them, but give them courage, hope, and tools to stand for their faith. And so part of this, as we are looking at our topic of burnout today, again, following up with that, Megan, let's switch gears and kind of go into a kind of a preventive mode. Okay. So, so let's say we have a leader listening today, and they're relating to everything we're talking about, whether it be environment, all of those conversations, bringing our own baggage into the leadership, having a struggle to admit that I'm just burned out, I'm hurting. They know that there's some things that they can do to come out of that, and we may wrap up with that. But for those who've been listening, waiting for this, we got some fixers in our audience, I'm sure, and they have a hard time listening because they're waiting for the fix.
I'm one
just
of those
tell me. Okay, so just
give me the bullet points.
Yeah, we're the bullet points. We're having a conversation. They're waiting for bullet points. So preventive. What are some preventive? Because we want them to stay in this conversation. So let's help those who are listening who are in that kind of mindset. What are some things we can do to prevent this burnout from coming on?
So I got 3 bullet points.
3 bullet points.
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
You got mindfulness,
okay,
work-life balance,
okay,
and restorative rest.
Okay, let's back up to mindfulness. Let's kind of unpack each one of those a little bit more. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by mindfulness?
It can mean a lot of things depending on what you need, but it's about being in the present and allowing yourself to take time to look inward and check in on yourself.
Okay.
And that can look different for different people. Like if you're an introvert, you're going to absolutely love mindfulness in the sense of, I'm going to have my quiet time. Maybe people do like to meditate or read their Bible, journal, like just get all into
their thoughts.
Yeah, their thoughts.
Their thoughts.
How they feel. Okay. Extroverts, maybe not so much. And so it might be more so like taking a walk and noticing your surroundings and giving yourself time to mind wander or savor a moment, but just checking in with your body to see how your body's feeling. Sometimes if we're struggling with checking out a lot during the workday because we're burned out, it's creating little check-in reminders for yourself and orienting yourself to a moment. So maybe every 3 hours you have a little chime that goes off to say like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? How am I feeling?
So I'm a grandpa. Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to come from pastor, grandpa, kind of, I've had a few years on the trail. And so with that, I would say for someone who's been in leadership for several years, hitting it hard, 110%. For me, that mindfulness is really stopping also and saying, hey, maybe I need to see a doctor and get a checkup. Let me just check my vitals. Let me check, and I've had some things, I guess, 30 years into ministry, some major things happened to me, and I didn't have a choice. And so I want to encourage our leadership now. If you're looking at, if you've got a pace that's 110% and you're go, you're not going to have the ability. I mean, you've set things up to where you can't have that mindfulness. It's just so I'm just going to piggyback on what you said, that it's vitally important that you stop and kind of check your engine. I know in counseling, when I was doing that a lot, one of the first things we did was, when was the last time you saw a doctor? Yep. When was the last time you had blood work? And just checking, if you will, the system of the body, and so there may be some things going on that you're not aware of. And so I think that mindfulness is not just your thoughts and your thinking about your life, but it's also physically, how are you doing? So
yeah. So if you start noticing, like, I'm holding a lot of tension a lot, then it's like, no wonder I'm getting migraines, or you may start noticing some trends with your physical body too. But yeah, it's just that checking in with yourself. Okay. And I even encourage people, with meditation, sometimes it's just learning how to breathe. And so if you give yourself even 5 minutes a day to practice breathing, you'll find that you're doing it throughout the day and you'll be like, oh, I think I was stressed right there. Yeah. But you'll notice your body takes a deep breath. And if you train it, it can start helping you out when you're not noticing. that you're feeling tension.
You know, some people may be laughing when they said that. Talking about practice breathing.
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example. You go to the dentist and you're clenching your jaw because you're afraid of pain, and then the dental assistant asks the question, "Are you breathing?" Like literally, physically, are you breathing? And I find myself when we deal with real life issues in ministry, when I think about certain things and internally, I begin to think through what that family's going through, or what that couple's going through, or what we're getting ready to face in the church. And you can find yourself externalizing the internal, clenched fists,
Yep.
set jaw, and they just your eyebrows coming together, and just your facial expressions, and all of these things come into emotion just from what you're internalizing. So people, they can laugh at us for saying, "Hey, learn how to breathe," but it's necessary. And I find that in that stressful moment, that stepping back and just letting just stop, take a breath. You know, I have some phrases that I've used through the years, but one of them was shared with me from an older Judeo-Christian pastor who said, "Tim, this too shall pass." And sometimes we get caught up in the moment as if this moment's going to continue forever, and it's not. And so that's a long way from just learning how to breathe, but I think that's the reality of it. Sometimes how it plays out. Okay, so what was the next one we said?
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance. Oh, this is a fun one.
Yeah. When do you, shut it down?
Yeah. Okay. So work-life balance for you, that's something that you've had to work through?
Yeah, I'm still practicing.
Still practicing it? Oh, so we don't have to have it down 100% right now. Okay.
All of these things, I feel like it's removing the pressure from it. Things are always up for reevaluation.
Okay.
So it's trying new things all the time.
Okay.
So, for me, my supervisor, when I was in a counseling associate, she told me she doesn't take more than 6 clients a day because she knows when she hits number 7, it's just an automated response. Like she's not engaged with the clients anymore.
In real time. She's not. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm trying right now.
Okay.
I'm seeing how it works.
Okay.
But then also with all the background stuff, trying to figure out how do I stay caught up on the administrative side and then actually still have a life? When do you say enough is enough for the day and trust that it'll still be there tomorrow?
Right.
And everybody's going to be okay.
For our everyday pastor, I would say one of their hard balance, work-life balance kind of thing would be don't always give your cell number out, your cell phone. That could come into play with the balance. I can't tell you how many times I've changed my cell phone number through the years.
I'll give you a little tip for that one.
Okay.
I use a Google number for work.
That's a good point. There you
So
go.
I turn the notifications off when I'm not working.
So that's something they can do. There you go. There's a tool you can do.
Tip.
There you go. Tip number 2. Okay. So work-life balance.
And so underneath these 3 points, I put surrender ultimately.
Okay.
Because we have to trust that God knows that we're human and there's only so much that we're built for in a day.
Well, now you're preaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. If I'm going to decide to practice mindfulness so that I can care for my body, I have to surrender at least, maybe 5 minutes a day to practicing something that I'm trying, and trusting that God will cover that 5 minutes. If I'm going to decide when I'm going to turn work off and go be with my family or go invest in something else because, you have a life,
right?
You're a person. You have to trust that God's going to take care of whatever you left there. So there's trust. Even with burnout, if you're going to share with somebody, hey, I'm struggling, and there's a fear that you're going to lose your job because of it, there's the surrender that God's going to take care of you, even if you lose your job.
I used to have some mentors in my life who would say, Tim, if you don't take care of Tim, there's not going to be a Tim to help take care of other people.
Exactly.
Right. We got to look at the marathon and not the sprint kind of thing. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Anything else with that? Going a little deeper.
With work-life
balance. Anything?
Really, it's going to look different for everybody, but, just taking a look at your workload, the pressures that you're putting on yourself, if there's any negative control there, where if you feel like if I don't do it, who's going to, or so-and-so won't do it as well as I can. We're like hoarding work like that. And then we're running ourselves down because we can't, shut it down for the day. That's something to look into.
I think also from being an administrator of a nonprofit before, we got executive directors who experience this. Pastors definitely experience this. We have this vision for the future for our organization or church, and we think we should be able to do all of these things. And one of the things I've realized is that with that surrender and trust, I have to trust the Lord to be able to say, we're not ready for that. If we were ready for that, we would have this person in play. And so sometimes we have to come back and say, we want to do all these things. And it's on our long range planning, strategic plan, all of these things. And so I had to come back to be able to have some humility, humble myself and say, we just can't do that right now.
Right.
Because I can't do it all. You can't do it all. And so we've got to pray and prepare our team. So for now, this is where we are, and we have to be good with that and trust that when we're ready, we're doing all of the hard work foundationally and trusting that God's going to bring the people when we can care for them and have a culture ready to receive them. And so sometimes as pastors, we just have to feel like we have to present this big new initiative and create and build and grow. And sometimes we forget. The church belongs to Christ,
right?
Not us.
Surrender.
The surrender. There you go. Back to the surrender. Okay. What was that? We talked about our third
restorative rest.
Restorative rest. Okay.
Yes.
What do you mean by restorative rest?
So that is, and I mean, this is very simple to think about, but it's essentially the opposite of whatever you're doing for work during the day. Okay. So if you're on screens all day, if you go home and watch TV or you're scrolling on your phone, it's not restful.
Right.
And your brain and your body need different kinds of stimulation to feel energized. Okay. So, if you're on screens absolutely all day to the moment you're shutting your eyes to go to sleep, it's going to be a drain.
Okay.
And so, restorative rest doesn't necessarily have to be like, well, I'm just laying on the couch or I'm taking a nap or whatever. It can be exhausting, but just in a different way than what you've already been doing. So if I'm on a screen all day and then I go home and work on some project, I may be physically tired, but I'm still going to be recharged for work the next day because, I was doing something different.
I think one thing for leaders who are in an office all day or working with people, there's that thing called cortisol dump. As our body, we go through things that stressors create certain hormones. And so one of the things that I have found that when I'm involved with people and I'm thinking a lot and doing a lot of administrative things, one of the best things that I can do is do something manual, physical. So go to the gym. I don't like going to the gym, but I need to go to the gym because I'm stressing my body in a different way physically, and I'm working through those hormones that my brain's been dumping on me all day and working through these scenarios and stuff. And so I think at least for some of the guys out there in leadership, just doing manual labor. Now, I grew up in a farm and ranch background, and so I'm in an office all day or I'm working with people all day, sometimes just doing manual tasks. I can think really well during that. And so you say restorative rest, I'm keying in on it's not so much just be still, but like you said, the opposite of what you do. So it can be very helpful. And then, and obviously your sleep patterns and
sleep hygiene is very important.
Yes. And so I think, unfortunately, we have leaders who want to tackle many different things. And I am one of them. And so as I'm listening, as we're having this, I'm looking at my life and I'm listening to you. I'm going, wow, I have a lot to learn. I've been in this for a long time. So I keep telling my wife, one day I'm going to get there. One day I'm going to get there. I'm going to figure this out.
When Jesus comes back.
Yeah. Please don't say that. At least not around her.
And that's for me too. Like, if I'm counseling and I'm talking to people all day, I get in my car, I want to call someone, and I'm like, whoa, why don't you be silent for a little bit?
One of the questions I had for you was when it comes to visionaries and staying focused and seeing that vision through, are there certain things that they can put into place? And this may be some overlap with what we've already said, but some things that they can put into place to be disciplined with keeping that focus. Have you seen things with enable you to keep your focus on your vision for your ministry? Some things that may have been helpful.
I feel like these prevention methods are really good for visionaries because it's like a big pause button.
Okay.
I'm a visionary too. I'm very impulsive.
Oh,
If I come up with an idea, I'm like, I'm doing it now.
okay.
And so I'll start working on a whole new project for hours. And I'm like, you just literally had this nonprofit you're working on or this private practice you're working on. You don't need to do this whole new thing. And so, making sure that I'm being mindful and taking care of myself, or that I'm making sure I have a work-life balance. I'm doing restorative rest, surrendering everything to God. It does make me pace myself. And so it's like, there's not, we can't run all day long and work forever. Like we have to hit pause. And so, looking at all the things that can be done in a day, it may say like, okay, God, I'm surrendering this idea to you. Or like you were saying, we're not ready for that step yet. So we're putting that one on hold and seeing when God delivers what we need.
Right.
So I'd say for visionaries, keeping your focus on God and not the project or the result that you're looking for.
I think too, just to go along with that, this has been true for the vision for TLS, our Texas Leadership Summit. This was an idea as a visionary that I had over 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just had to put it on the shelf for a long time. Now we're engaging in that and doing some things. I think ultimately, though, for a Christian leader, we have to acknowledge that this is about one person, and that's Jesus Christ. And in our lives, we are stewards of what he has given us, this life he's given us. And so it's been very helpful for me to focus on, no matter what I do, this is for Christ and not Tim. This, as leaders, and we're going to follow his model of leadership, servant leadership. We've got to come back to, if you're going to be a great leader, you have to learn first how to be a great follower. And so when I look at the life of Christ, he would go off to the mountain side to pray. He'd get alone. He'd leave the multitudes, go and be alone with the Father, because everything he did was towards the will of the Father and not his own. And so I think when you talked about these three things, it just kept reminding me of what Christ did. It kept reminding me, if I'm following him really well and I'm following his example, he came and served and suffered. That obedience ultimately took him to the cross. And so I'm going, okay, in my life, if I'm going to be a good steward of the life that he has given me, whether it be a pastor, Christian leader, whomever you may be, that's what we got to nail down first. So these are some great thoughts and practice and preventive things, but let's keep it in the right context. That your life doesn't belong to you. I think it's one of the best things for me to keep my focus. My life doesn't. I was purchased by the blood of Christ. So these things, I'm going to incorporate these things to be a better steward of the leadership that God has entrusted to me. And so I think it's very powerful for the leaders that we're sharing with today, is that in their leadership role, we simply want to encourage them with these tools and these opportunities to improve their personal leadership life, and understand that there's a lot of fear involved in what you've talked about, maybe behind the scenes. As I'm connecting I'm trying to read between the lines here.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing play out in people who are afraid to acknowledge they are in burnout is fear. You mentioned trust, you mentioned surrender. We've talked about these things we need to do. But when we are fearful, then it can paralyze us. And then we can move into this overthinking things. And so I want to encourage the leaders who are listening today, you have nothing to fear. We serve a risen King. And ultimately, that's where this path that we're on is heading down to how we're serving him. Right?
Yep.
And so when he says to his disciples, in this world you shall have tribulation, but take courage, I've overcome the world. That is true for the believer today. He has still overcome the world. Now we just aren't seeing it played out to its fullest potential. We're waiting for his return, right?
Yep.
But in the meantime, what can they do? We're looking to the resurrection. And so, not to get preachy on us, but I am a pastor. So, and we are talking to pastors and Christian leaders, whether they're serving in the church or a nonprofit, Christian nonprofit. Ultimately, we have to come back to that place in our leadership that we're a great follower of Christ. And so the things that you've shared with us today, I think when you build on that right foundation, then you have a freedom to investigate the things you're encouraging us with today. I would like to ask you this, as we're getting closer to the end of today, do you see any correlation between burnout and time in the Word? Do you see any ties there with the power of God's Word? And is there any correlation that you've seen, whether in your personal life or with other people you've dealt with?
That is a very interesting question, because it's sometimes, depending on the severity of your burnout, the Word is going to feel very empty.
That's interesting you said that.
So, if your body's depleted and you're going through a discouragement or a depression, or, you're just totally shut off, maybe the words on the page used to leap out to you and they're very encouraging or, motivational or just grounding truth. And you may look at it and have zero emotional response to it. It may not sit with you like it used to. It may just be words on a page.
Yeah.
And that can be really scary for people, especially if they're in the ministry, where it's like, this has been my lifeline for so long. This is my job. Do I really believe this stuff anymore? Is it true? What does it mean that I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it and I feel nothing? And so, depending on the severity level, sometimes it can be a grounding place for people, and other times it can be kind of scary and discouraging when you're like,
this has been my life.
Yeah, this has been my life,
and I'm not getting
here.
anything from this.
Yeah. And if you're still serving in ministry, say you're a pastor and you're preaching and you're feeling that way, that's also scary, because it's like, do I believe this anymore? And I'm sharing this with people and I feel nothing.
I think, if I may speak to that, again, just in pastoral ministry, one of the things that I see with pastors who find themselves at that place is they focus too much on relationships with their people and not primarily, first of all, focused on their walk of faith themselves, because they've allowed other people to direct what they do and how they do it, or fear of rejection or fear of not being successful. And you can focus on, well, I've got to be in the Word because this is what I do. And not who I am, as far as preventive. And so, having been a pastor of our church for 18th year, I've seen that trend personally. And you get caught up in, this is what I do, this is what I do, and then for too long you forget. Wait a minute, I began this out of passion for Christ,
right? Yeah.
And I got into the Word because of my passion for Him, and I just wanted to serve Him. And then you put people in the mix. Church would be great if you didn't have to deal with people, right? So,
or they just do what you want them to do.
You just do what you want. Yeah, it's when we're actually honest with each other, it causes the problem. We start working through our issues. So I say that just jesting, but
I think you're right on it too, because I think in the last podcast you referenced that the chief end of man is to know God and enjoy Him forever. And maintaining that is crucial to doing ministry, because it's you and God first, and then what comes from that is what overflows into everything you do.
Right.
And so, if we're trying to do things from our own strength and we're trying to produce and get people to do this or that, or, if we're trying to produce results from what we think needs to happen with an idea or what we think people need to be doing, then we get into that negative control and it can start getting really messy. But, if we're centering ourselves in God every day, surrendering the day to Him, and whatever happens, we trust was His will.
Trust and surrender.
Life becomes an adventure. It becomes interesting. It's an opportunity where it's like, man, that didn't really feel good for me, but I wonder what God did with that. So it's always that curiosity and that walking with God through your day. That's the pleasure of doing ministry. It's not about the outcome that we think should happen necessarily.
Well, with Desert Road Ministries, your nonprofit, and focusing specifically on leadership burnout and wanted to work with couples and families. And where do you see this going with this ministry, or hope to see it go?
We see well, sounds big, but I think this could have a worldwide impact.
Okay.
We know right now
You are a visionary.
like this is going global. But, seriously though, with our ministry, we want to enrich the spiritual health of ministry leaders and their families.
Mm-hmm.
But what we see happening with that is whenever you have ministry leaders and their families that are, overflowing the love of God and the freedom in Christ onto their congregations, joy like that is contagious. And,
Amen.
It gives people a model, and it gives people permission to live out that same freedom in their own walk with God.
Mm-hmm.
And then they share that with the people they come into contact with in their daily life. And to me, that's where the community impact happens.
Okay.
And, if you do that, there's no stopping it,
Yeah, right. That joy is contagious.
Yeah.
So you're willing to walk with people through their difficulties. I have a team ready to do that and walk through. Is it possible for us to focus on a Christian leader or a pastor and their spouse and be able to say, let's push pause. Let's just walk through your location. Where are you as a couple? Where are you as an individual? So you're able to do that individually and then as a couple, and then they may have children as a family impact. And are you looking to bring leaders together and have maybe topics that they want to address or walk through things like that?
I would absolutely love that. I mean, my vision is I really want to help ministry leaders take the academic side of the Bible and to take that spiritual, inner walk with God and combine them together to have that fullness of that encounter with God and just have more opportunities to be their authentic self.
Oh, wow.
So, I'd love to have retreats where we bring ministry leaders together and they can do their, silence and solitude moments and then have group meditation moments and reflections on what's coming from that time alone with God. Okay. Having spiritual or just different trainings and workshops on connecting with God, that looking inward part. If people struggle with how do I do that? Because, even if they're struggling with burnout and the Bible isn't helping them in the way that it has before, helping them engage with God in a way that maybe they haven't thought of before. But just walking alongside people to help them enrich their spiritual health and their mental health so that they can serve and enjoy God. You know what I mean? Like, that's the point.
That's the point. Know him, enjoy him forever. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, any thoughts as we're wrapping up the day? Parting
recovery.
Comments? Okay.
We kind of talked prevention.
Yes.
Recovery.
Okay.
Foundational self-care is what I talk to people about a lot. And it may seem really simple, but it's what you got to do. A lot of times it's looking at your sleep hygiene. Are you eating? Are you drinking water? Are you going to the bathroom when you need to? Like, are you showering? Whenever
the basics.
Whenever you're in severe burnout, we're looking at that stuff.
Oh, okay.
And whenever you start taking care of your body and you're building trust back with yourself that you're going to be taken care of, that's when your body can start to warm up to like feeling things again and
right.
because it's being taken care of.
Right.
So, we focus on that, getting support. So,
Okay.
whether that's seeing a counselor or if there are people in your church staff that can come alongside, having that happen and then engaging in more restorative rest.
Okay.
So,
if I find myself in a bad place, you can help me get to a good place.
yes.
All right. That's what we're looking for. Yeah. So we have people that are in the middle of it. We have people who have been waiting for that preventive part of it. And now for those who are in the darkest of moments, there is hope and there is healing available. And so we want to definitely reach out to them. And so they can go to your website.
Yes.
What's
It's
your website?
desertroadministries.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we're on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Okay. And if anyone who's listening would like to know more about this, they can also reach out to us through our TexasLeadershipSummit.org website and reach out to our director, Deanna Kennesell. And we just want to walk with leaders and encourage them, give them the courage, the tools, and the hope to stand for their faith. And some of the things we've talked about today have been vitally important. So, Megan, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for
Looking
having
forward
me.
to working with you in the future.
For sure.
Thank you.